today I'd like to talk about nutrient cycling. And, the reason I say that is because when we harvest things from the field and take it off the field, we're taking nutrients off. And I don't know if everybody understands that or not, but there's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, zinc, iron, manganese, copper, boron, and molybdenum, and probably some other things like nickel and cobalt that maybe are necessary for some plants. But these are essential plant nutrients that the plant needs to grow, and they're in the plant when we harvest that plant. And so the idea would be to kind of know what you take off, so you need to put that back on. But wait a minute, we're growing this in soil, not in a hydroponic situation. We're growing it in soil. Soils keep supplying nutrients kind of based on the microbial life in the soil and how the soil health, how good it is. But if the soil test is high, it's kind of like a gauge on a fuel tank. If it's high, you don't put more fuel in the tank. So if it's high, why would you put more fertilizer on? So you kind of evaluate all that. But the other sad part about on the tank, fuel tank, when it gets empty, it just goes zoom and you're done. But the soil, it's a different kind of gauge. And even though it might be low, it keeps supplying nutrients. And it would do that for years and years. The yields won't be as good, but it never quits. And so you have a disaster. But kind of always think about that nutrient cycling in that manner. So if your soil test is below a certain number, then you need to put some of that nutrient on. If it's just down a little bit from adequate, you put a little bit on, but if it's really low, then you maybe put more on than what the crop removes to get your soil up to where it is producing like a normal yields. But the higher our yield, the more nutrients you take off, which implies that the more fertilizer we have to put on. But if your soil tests are high, you don't put the fertilizer on. How do I get people to understand that? It's pretty simple, but you have to look at the soil test. So this fall after harvest, you ought to be checking every field for nutrient levels. And I know a lot of guys do grid sampling, and that's fine, or you need to do zone sampling. And it's kind of like, I always say, if you had 3 tractors in the yard, you don't pull the dipstick on one and put that much oil in all 3 tractors. You check each tractor. You check each field. If you got a big field, then you should probably divide it into every 80 acres, 40 acres, 80 acres, and take a sample from there. Or do the grid sampling so you get the whole variability. And then if the tests are low, you can put nutrient on. If the test is high, you don't have to put that nutrient on because the soil is a big supply house. We can measure the total supply if you're interested in that. And then we're trying to figure out how to get the soil life and the soil health so good that we can capture all that. But eventually we got to put some back on because we're taking stuff off. And always kind of keep that in mind. Do the soil testing and then put nutrients on where the soil is low. And we can help you decide on what low is. If it's high, you don't need to put that nutrient on. I think in this time frame with commodity prices where they are, we really need to evaluate our fertility and just use fertilizer where it's needed. Thank you.